Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heel vs Babyface in the first dungeon that you get to do in the brand new World of Warcraft expansion Warlords of Draenor. It's called Bloodmaul Slag and it's situated pretty much in the middle of the north in Frostfire Ridge, which is the starting zone for the Horde when this brand new expansion actually releases. When it releases, we do not know. Judging by the kind of bugginess of the alpha so far, and alpha is alpha, that's not a criticism, I would kind of speculate we're looking more November, December than September, October at the moment, but who knows how many builds they are ahead in the back end at Blizz. Now this is an ogre based dungeon pretty much throughout the whole course of it, and rather interestingly the Bloodmauls surround this area, which you may of course expect, and I'm talking about Frostfire Ridge, but they're level 100, which is quite intriguing. They seem to have low health pools to match the health pools we have, but they're level 100 and they hit like level 100s. I've tried to play in their area and have been shooed off. I've been shooed off out of it with not too much trouble by them. So whether or not that's a bug, it could easily be a bug, and or just something Blizzard haven't implemented, and they will be scaled down to the respective level 90, 91, 92, whatever it's going to be, or whether or not that will actually turn out to be a level 100 area, some sort of questing area. We wait to see. So as you can see now, I'm just whizzing through the trash. We don't need to have 20 minutes of trash for me to look at, but I'll try to have a look at some of the scenes around the place. I think it's a really cool looking dungeon. Yes, I think it draws heavily from influences like Gug'rokk, but why not? You know, why not? I love the kind of rock, cavey, molten aspect of this. These to me is what really kind of feels like a dungeon. You know, there are certain dungeons which I just couldn't quite get into. I'm not going to do my whole Mr. Pandaria debate here, but even the dungeons didn't even feel like dungeons to me. This feels really cool. This feels pretty epic, to be quite frank, at the moment. I do have to take into consideration, of course, that this is all new, and I'm looking at it through fanboy specs. So, first things first, our boss that we're going to do, and you do get to choose which one you do first. You can either go left and do that boss, or go right like we have, and end up at Slave Watcher Crush Toe. Not Camel Toe. Easy. Crush Toe. Now, we didn't have too much trouble with this boss. Does a few abilities. Earth Crush, which is where he sticks the rock in the ground, and then you can see that conal effect in front of him. There we go. Just move out of that. If it hits you, you take moderate damage, and it'll also stun you for a couple of seconds. I think I demonstrate it later on in the vid. He does a ferocious yell, which increases damage by 10% for 20 seconds. And it also weakens the will of the miners around him. The miners, you'll see, will be coming into the fight. It's interruptible, so interrupt it. He'll do a wild slam, which deals physical damage to everybody and also knocks everybody back. It will interrupt if you're spellcasting. And he'll do a crushing leap, where he'll select a member of the group, he'll leap towards them, literally hammer them into the ground, ouch, and you'll be rooted there to the ground. The miners that he calls into the fight with his Raise the Miners ability will then come and attack you. The good thing is, when the miners come into the fight, they'll recognise what faction you play for. So if he brings in this case, a Tauren miner, they will fight for us. But he brings in a human, a Draenor, etc, etc, they will fight against us. So that bit I found rather interesting. Other than that, the miners will just do a wee bit of damage and also put a bleed effect on you, and you will get an increased amount of damage dealt to you by 5% for 5 seconds. So I'd recommend that you dispatch the miners as quickly as humanly possible. So once more, we're going to go through the trash really, really quickly. Now again, you've actually got a choice of which way you get to the next boss. We went back up where we'd cleared the trash and then went over the top end. If you so desired, you could have turned right outside of the boss and cleared more trash going all the way round to the boss. So you got to do both these bosses before you can progress on to the next stage, because killing these two will actually unlock the next area, and I will show you the wee little cutscene, and it's all very twee. Just to by the by, by the way, because I wanted to get as many buys in the sentence as I possibly could. I've got to say, with the reworking of Killjaden's Cunning for a Destro Warlock, and also the removal of Fellflame, I really fear for Destruction Warlocks at the moment, because we have 0 maneuverability. 0. Can't cast Dick on the move. So I found a lot of the fights were movement intensive, and I was just constantly interrupting myself. I shall get to that a little bit later on. Let's turn to the next boss, and this boss is Magmalatus, but not this guy. This guy here is Gug'rokk. Great names, aren't they? And he's stage 1. You defeat Gug'rokk. He's not that difficult. He'll do a magma barrage, which you'll see these pools on the ground. Just step out of them. Step out of the fire, people. Otherwise, you'll take low damage, but it'll be ticking per second, so it will stack up. He brings in a couple of adds, Ruination or Calamity. Ruination is the trickier of the two, because it hits relatively hard. He'll do a rough slam for about 18.5k damage and stun you, and an Earth Shatter for around 7k, which is moderate damage. Calamity will do a dot on a selected player, which will tick for fire damage for 6 seconds. Dispel it. If you don't dispel it, it will jump to another player. But once the Gug'rokk has been destroyed, that's when Magmalatus will come into the fight. Again, nothing to really worry about here. He'll do a smash. He'll do a Molten Impact. Like that, you see, just coming in there, which will summon in an ad. When the ad comes into the fight, just dispatch it quickly, because he'll start putting debuff on the ground. It'll do conal attacks, things like that, so you just want to get rid as soon as possible. But you've got to be careful, because he does something called Withering Flame, which needs to be interrupted, because if it isn't, it'll do fire damage every 2 seconds to whoever's been affected, but it will reduce their attack speed, their casting speed, and their movement speed by 25%. So it needs to be stopped. So there we go. Magmalatus is down, or Magmalatus, if you're from a certain part of the world. And that's the wee little cutscene that you get. So the flames are down at the bottom, and you can now make your way there. So, in theory, it probably would have been better to go right after the first boss and clear 2 waves of trash, even though that seems as if you're clearing more trash, because when you defeat that boss, you can just go back down the bottom again and all your trash is cleared. Whereas if you go across the top like we did, we now have to clear more. I'm just saying, I know it works out the same either way, but, you know, I'm a kind of guy that's, like, picky when it comes to aesthetics and things like that. So, yeah, whatevs. So, once more, we're going to whiz through the trash here. Nothing to worry about on the trash sake. And we get a little lava beast popping up and saying, hey! And that moves us on to the next boss, which is really pretty cool. His name is Rotol. He has 3 abilities, but that doesn't stop the fight from being a whole lot of fun. Now, the first one he will do is called Fiery Boulder. It will arrive where the melee and tanks are. It's telegraphed by that lava pool on the ground. Move away from it, and move substantially away from it, because if you're on it or within 8 yards of it, you will take 15k damage. The boulder will then roll down the bridge, and if it hits any of the ranged players, it will deal 20,000 damage and stun them for 1 second. Be aware and move. He'll then do this heat wave, which we can see here. It deals 3,500 fire damage per second for 8 seconds and pushes players back. So what do we not do, folks? Don't stand by the edges of the bridge. It will blow you off. I have seen it happen, and it's not one of those pretty blow-offs. It's one of those nasty blow-offs where you fall into the magma down below and you die. He will then bring in some Burning Slag, which will ignite players in the area for 7,500 fire damage per second. So move out of the fire, but at the same time, he will continue to do the heat wave. He will continue to do the fiery boulders. It's a wee bit of a DPS check, but it's a whole lot of fun. Short, sweet, quite cool fight. Looking forward to seeing what they do that with Heroic. Really hoping that they actually add some extra mechanics into that. Because that could be a whole lot of fun, especially in the hardcore dungeons, which we're going to be doing, and they're allegedly going to be harder than the Raid Finder content, which is going to be produced. Ha! So if that's the case, there's got to be some sort of reward in these heroic dungeons that are going to be tougher than LFR, because the gear is going to be lower in item level. So Blizz, I'm going to have to say this again. Pretty pleased with sugar on top. If you want to make heroic dungeons with lower level gear than Raid Finder and stop players from just going into the easiest access to get better loot, you've got to put incentives into your heroic dungeons. You've got to put mounts, not on the bloody Blizz store, in the actual dungeons themselves. You've got to put transmog, you've got to put toys, you've got to put some sort of incentivization. Rant over. Right, we're now on to the final boss. Again, only 3 abilities, and he's called Gug'rokk. Now, the first ability is very important because it's called Molten Blast. It will deal 20k fire damage and give 1 stack of molten core to the player that he targets. Interrupt it. If you don't interrupt it, it will cause a molten core on a player, which again, healers, you do have an opportunity to dispel if the interrupt failed to go through. But it will increase the boss's damage by 10% for 1 minute. And if he gets to 3 stacks of molten core, he'll proc Molten Barrage, which will explode, dealing 12,500 fire damage to all players and consume the stacks. But be aware, that's the base damage. He's going to have 3 stacks of it, which increases it by 30%. You get where I'm coming from. So make sure it's either interrupted or dispelled. He'll then do magma eruptions, which you can see these pools on the ground. They'll be there for 2 minutes, so they will consume the battleground. They deal 10,000 fire damage per second. So what do we do again? Move out of the fire. And the final ability is this Summon Unstable Slag. That was the ad that came into the fight. Get rid of it straight away. It will deal 7,500 fire damage every 2 seconds to 2 random players, but if it gets to the kilns that are on the outside, it will get empowered and deal 9,000 damage to all players every 3 seconds. So there we go. That is the first dungeon, Bloodmaul Slag Mines, out of the way. I liked it. I like the aesthetics of it. I love ogres anyway, so I thought it was really good fun. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook and twitch.tv/HeelVersusBabyface for live streaming, and I shall be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.